Well, hi everyone. I'm so sorry to say that over the 4th of July weekend, there were so many business owners that whose businesses just were decimated. Um, and they had a horrible weekend over their PCs being locked up, their servers being locked up by the awful, horrible actions of international hackers. And I'm sure that I speak for Dave and Vinny today. Our hearts go out to those business owners and to those MSPs whose customers those are. And we stand ready to help any way that we can. And what happened was it's the result of a criminal organization that we're not going to mention here because we just don't want to glorify their name, but by their affiliates who buy their software, actually. And although I'm thankful that none of our customers were affected, these criminals hacked a software manufacturer called Kaseya. And Kaseya is a software used by organizations, businesses like ours, called MSPs. And what we do is we use them to manage our customer systems. And so what the hackers did is they used that management software to leap into customer systems of those MSPs to render them incredibly useless and effectively hold them for ransoms between $5 and $50 million is what you've heard. So
I just want to clarify one thing, Jim. MSPs do use this product, but SpiceNet does not, right?
Yeah, we don't use Kaseya. We use ConnectWise. But so that'll be part of our conversation. But being an MSP, this hits really close to home. I mean, this is our industry, right? We make our living off of this. We work very hard to protect and help our customers using this type of software. And the fact that it happened, wow, we really have to dissect this and work hard to help you from letting it happen to you and to keep it from happening to our customers wherever possible. So, but first, I'm Jim Gaston. Again, this is No Law Firm Left Behind. Thanks for joining. We're here to help your law firm be more competitive, keep your staff and attorneys productive, all in an effort to help you get more customers and keep more customers. And I don't think there's anything more important than keeping your business running so that you can stay competitive than a conversation like this. So today we've got Dave and Vinny. Guys, how's it going?
I'm doing well.
Hope you had a good 4th of July weekend. I know, Dave, you had quite a fun weekend working on some systems this weekend.
Yeah, I spent most of this weekend dealing with, buttoning up other security vulnerabilities. So just so people know, we get hit all the time with updates from people saying, we found this vulnerability. We found that vulnerability. You better protect this. You better protect that. So I got to spend pretty much, the bulk of the weekend addressing a vulnerability that came out that Microsoft released. It's like, you should probably go do this to all your servers. So that was my forte.
Many of you got to do some camping, right?
Yeah, I did.
Fun time.
I didn't even know most of this was going on till I started getting messages because I was basically off the grid.
I don't know if you're lucky or not on that one. So what we know, here's what we know, okay? And guys, add what you know as well. And Vinny, we just looked at this up. Kaseya officially reports 40 to 60 managed service providers, MSPs, companies like ours, were affected by this. Their customers.
Yep.
And some direct customers to Kaseya, because Kaseya does go direct to corporations as well. And then from that, they leapfrogged into, and that's what I call it, leapfrog. Some people are calling it supply chain hacking, but they leapfrogged into those MSP customer systems. Around 1,500 customer systems is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, now, that's what Kaseya themselves are reporting on their incident report page. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And as far as the number of computers and servers that were encrypted, that's really, I mean, the criminals are actually claiming upward near 1 million is what they're saying, right?
That is correct. Yep.
So, but we don't know if that's true or not. And the depths of that may never really actually be known because again, it's not Kaseya's customers, it's Kaseya's customers. And so that Kaseya doesn't have direct access into those systems to have any information due to security and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we know is that there are two Kaseya types of products. There's cloud and then there's on-premise software. Mm-hmm. And from Kaseya's reports, their cloud software was not affected. It was only a set of their on-premise software that manages servers. So that's a good thing, actually, if you ask me, because they probably have way more cloud customers than they do on-premise customers. So anyway, to get kind of give a parallel, we use ConnectWise cloud product, but they have an on-premise product as well. So yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. Now, from what I understood, they had some early detection on this. Do you guys know about the early detection?
Yeah, so some of the reports that I'm reading from Kaseya themselves is saying that they started noticing some funny stuff. They couldn't exactly pinpoint it, right? But they did start noticing some unusual activity. And so what they did, their action, they got together very quickly, right? Their leadership got together, and their decision very quickly was to shut down their cloud services. Even though they thought it wasn't affecting their cloud services, they shut down their cloud services, which affected all of their customers, right? As far as the availability of the service, which they think was, and they sent out an email, a high priority email to all of their on-premise customers that said, shut down your on-premise VSA servers, your Kaseya servers, because there's a vulnerability that's being exploited, and they think that they're claiming that it's saved a lot of businesses, a lot of other businesses from also being affected by this attack.
Yeah. And the details are still obviously very close to chest on this. I mean, nobody's tipping their cards on all of it yet. I'm sure the investigation continues. I'm sure there are still a lot of unanswered questions. But I also understand, as of Saturday, there had been no additional reports of any MSP customers being affected. Can you guys confirm that as well?
I've not heard anything to the contrary.
I've not heard yet, but I mean they have released some details on the attack itself. We do know that, for example, the attackers were able to bypass the authentication, right? And use the tools that companies like ours would use to deploy software. They used that server to deploy the malware and execute it on those remote sites.
So let's talk for a second here about why an attack like this has the potential to be so devastating. A tool like a Kaseya or a ConnectWise, Automate, and there's other ones out there in the market too, but those are kind of the two of the biggest players in this industry. These programs, by definition, are given significant trust by all the other computers. The whole point of these systems, in many, many instances, is that all the computers on your network look to this machine and do whatever it tells it to do.
When you have in this situation, in this particular situation.
And in addition to that, like, we are using these tools to deploy security tools, to deploy our protections, to make sure that our systems are patched, right? So they used our own tools against us, basically.
It's like, if you think back to Independence Day, when they said they're using our own satellites against us. Remember that line? It's the same kind of thing. They're using the very tool set that companies like ours put in place to protect clients in order to harm them. And that's a scary proposition to people in our industry, obviously. But it really should be for all of, the endpoint users as well. So all the actual clients of the clients, because you're counting on this tool set and it ended up being part of the attack. That's nerve-wracking, to say the least.
And one of the other nerve-wracking things to me is that we do things like two-factor authentication, and complex passwords and all those different things, right? But because it bypassed authentication, right? Because of that vulnerability inside of the Kaseya software, well, wait
a second. Hold on a second. I'm going to stop you on that one real quick. I'm sorry, Vinny. I have to. They came out and said they have not seen any alteration or
In their code.
vulnerability in their code
No,
of their software.
well, they said that the hackers did not modify their code, is what they
What's
said.
that? Now, I
But
don't
what
want to
they
jump to
did,
conclusions.
but they did mention in their release that the 0-day vulnerability was exploited, right? So
Yeah,
there was a vulnerability in the Kaseya software that allowed the hackers to bypass the authentication. That's in the official release, right?
yeah, yeah.
But Kaseya also said that their code was not necessarily modified. It was just a vulnerability that was out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so everybody likes to ask, how could this happen? How could this happen? How could this happen? And I have, when I do my cybersecurity luncheons and presentations and so on and so forth, I like to compare software, any software, whether it's Windows or Kaseya or ConnectWise or anything like that. I like to compare it to a house. Okay. And imagine your house or apartment, doesn't matter, but imagine a house. And imagine trying to seal that house completely from any outside air, right? You want no dust, no particulates, no bacteria, no viruses to come into that house. Well, so you're going to try to hermetically seal that house, right? You're going to, caulk it up. You're going to do everything they can. So you build the house and it's got cracks, right, and crevices. So you caulk that up. That's a patch, okay?
You get a front door too,
right? What's that?
You got a front door too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but I mean, you seal up everything you can seal up. And then eventually what's going to happen is air's going to find another way. And so you're going to patch that. And then the air's going to find another way. And then that air is going to get old. Or not the air, but the patches are going to get old. And now you're going to go back and repatch. Or maybe the air gets more caustic and is going to attack the caulk that you used. So it's going to be a constant battle to try to keep that outside from getting in. And I think that's a really good example, actually, because that's what's happening with software vendors. You make a piece of software and somebody's trying to get into it and they're going to find a way. They're going to never stop trying to find a way, and they may eventually find a way.
And let's add another dimension to what you're saying there, Jim.
Go for it.
Let's go back to the hermetically sealed environment. Take the house out of it and talk about just even a small portion of any
just a room,
a
closet.
How expensive in the real world is it to have something hermetically sealed?
Right.
And most people, unless it's absolutely forced upon them, will not put that kind of money out there. And it's the same way when it comes to security. I always tell people there is nothing that's 100% effective, period. End of story. Ever. And if there even was, it would be so otherworldly expensive that nobody would ever choose to go that route.
Not only expensive, but what's the usability of it? If you want to,
you breathe in there without oxygen,
If you want to seal a house so no outside air come in, that means there's no front doors, no windows, right?
And so I always explain to people, this is never about prevention per se, because absolute prevention is a farce. Will not happen. It's about risk. It's about risk tolerance and risk assessment.
Yeah.
And so it's about how far are we willing to go to get rid of this particular risk.
Well, let's talk about that actually then. And so there's two things here. There's actually two sides of the equation, kind of three. There is the vendor of the software, there is the MSP, and then there's the customer. And what should be done in each of the three, right? And so a Kaseya and a ConnectWise or whoever else is out there that's making software, they have teams and teams and teams of people that are legitimately evaluating the security of their software.
Yep.
No doubt about it. They spend millions of dollars on it. We see it every day. We see it from our vendors. We're getting updates. Hey, we found this. We're patching this. Hey, we want you to do this. And they're constantly trying to do that. One of the things that obviously it affects a customer, right? So, and the MSP, which is another level of customer. We should always be looking at vendors that are doing that. Never considering a vendor that isn't doing something like that, that doesn't have some type of compliance, some type of procedure, some type of process.
Mhm.
You guys agree? I mean, there's too much online anymore.
So here's what I always tell people, you know, and I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to say something, then I'm going to backtrack just a step. Okay. Don't go with, brand new stuff out there. All right. Go with people that are tried and true, because they've put in the time, they put in the investment, they put in the effort to ensure theoretically their security and their compliance. Now I'm going to take a step back, because this is technology. And if we ignored every new technology that was out there, we would never have made the advancements that we did. So it becomes, and the fact that newer technologies can oftentimes do the same things as the older technologies, better, faster, secure, more securely, et cetera. So it really becomes a very challenging situation. If we get stuck in always sticking with the old guard, you might miss a really great opportunity to improve your security.
How does anything new come about if we don't try it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, and this is something that you'll hear from me for the rest of this discussion, it comes down to what risk are you willing to tolerate?
Yeah.
That's it. Because there's no guarantees.
Yeah. Well, and that's so true, Dave. Well, people are going to use the software they're going to use. I think we gave a little bit of advice on that. Now let's talk about our business, right? Mm-hmm. What should MSPs do? Now, I'm going to say very black and white, simply, there's two types of MSPs. Ones that take security serious, ones that don't, okay? I'm proud to say that we spend thousands and thousands of dollars each month on security just for our business, to protect our business in an effort to protect our customers' business. Right, guys? And there are MSPs that don't. Let's talk about some of the basics that MSPs like us should be doing for the sake of the customer, the people that are listening and find this show, find this podcast, right? What should the simple things that they should be asking their MSPs, their IT guys and gals, what they're doing to protect their business? What's the basic?
I'll start there. All right. And this is the same advice that I give to any customer that I go into to help them with their data privacy and cybersecurity. Across MSPs have unique things, and I'll let Vinny, talk about some of the things that are unique to the MSP environment. But in general, it starts with an understanding of that you do have vulnerabilities. We might spend thousands and thousands of dollars a month on security. We also can never get complacent and believe that we've got it all figured out. And that's the number one thing that gets most people, regardless of industry, is thinking, oh, we're secure, we're good.
We're good.
If you don't have on a mindset of, look, I know that there's something new coming down the pipe. I know that there's something that we have not noticed yet. There's something that will blindside us, no matter how hard we work. If you don't adopt that mindset out of the gate, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that an MSP, just like any business, needs to do is step back and get real and understand that you've got weak points. You've got vulnerabilities. You've got to accept that and say, we're committed to continually improving on those. Anyone that says we got to figure it out is lying to you.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. It's all about the attitude. So you have
it's
to
almost
have
an arrogance in a way. It's either an ignorance or an arrogance.
The more I learn and the more technologies that I deploy, the more terrified I get at the risks that are out there. And I'm talking even about our stuff too. Mm-hmm. We have gone to extensive work to try to lock our systems down. And we've made a lot of progress. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I see people that have done the same things we've done and they still get burnt.
Yeah.
And that's scary. So to me, it's about attitude more than anything else. You have to accept the reality that you are not going to be perfect, but you have got to get better.
I would like to point out that we know nothing about any of the MSPs that were whose customers were attacked here.
Yep.
We don't know if they were doing great on security or taking it. We have no idea.
I mean, like you said at the beginning, Jim, my heart goes out to them because I know how
I can only imagine if it's us. Wow. wow, that's a brush that I don't want to paint with. You know, we are not at all castigating anybody here.
Couldn't.
This is only for the benefit of the customer to evaluate who they have and help that MSP get better for them.
And I think that's the number one thing that I would give as a recommendation to the end user is you need to have a serious talk with your managed service provider and say, hey, I know you're not perfect, but can you please tell me that you've got a process for this?
Not just tell me
it seriously.
Start telling me is a part of it, right? Showing me is the key, right?
I agree.
Prove it. Proof is in the pudding. Show me what you're doing. Show me that you've got two-factor authentication on your Kaseya or ConnectWise or antivirus, whatever, right? Show me that you've got all these things in place. Tell me about your safeguards. You know?
Yep.
So that's a start right there, Dave. I will say that it's my opinion, and I've got some recommendations, by the way, for Kaseya, ConnectWise, and other companies like this that I thought of over the weekend because my mind is churning about it. But one of the things that I think is very important, maybe it would help, maybe it wouldn't have helped, two-factor authentication it's a basic. It's almost a basic now. Again, don't know if it would have helped, but certainly can't hurt. It's one of those things. I don't know that it can help you, but I definitely know it won't hurt you.
You minimize things when you put these types of things in place. You minimize, or you lower the risk, right? And that's what you're after is lowering the risk and lowering the risk as much as you can.
Yeah. The more you do, the look. Everybody's budget's different. People can't spend like a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon, right? It would be great if we could, but we can't. But we have to do, if you don't start with the right attitude, like Dave's saying, and you don't start with the basics, then nothing above it matters, right? So let's talk about what customers should do. Basics again, guys. Let's start with the basics. Antivirus, up to date, managed, patching. What else, guys?
So there's some more stuff that we can do at a customer level, right? And Dave has been doing a lot of this recently, and making more recommendations of those things. There are services out there for detecting these types of they're called indicators of compromise. And Kaseya has a list of what those indicators are for this exact vulnerability, right? Yeah. And so antivirus is good. Things like a product like Cisco Umbrella, which is doing filtering, right?
Web filtering.
DNS level, web filtering, yep, at the computer level and at the network level, right? Firewalls need to be maintained and updated, and all those things work together, right? All those things help you to detect activity like this, But one of the most relevant ones, I think, is the MDR side of things, right?
Well, let me say something before we get to that, okay? Because I don't want to jump into the advanced until we've said something about the basics. Things like your antivirus, your security patching, your Cisco Umbrella, or web filtering, and so on and so forth. Those things are in the past. Remember the old cars we used to drive? I had a 79 Firebird, right? I'm sorry, 75 Firebird. That 75 Firebird, when it had an engine problem, never told me anything, right? Never said a word. It just broke down, right? Well, all of these different pieces of software that you're supposed to be using to keep your computers and servers secure and up to date all have now, like the new cars, warning lights, and indicators. And just like your cars today, they have to have updates for the cars nowadays. These softwares have to as well. But if you don't have somebody looking at that check engine light, okay, on that software, that's what a managed service provider does, is looks for that check engine light. Make sure it's running in time. Make sure it's being oil changed and windshield wipers being changed out. Making sure that it's safe for you to operate your computer and servers in an environment where you're not as likely to get hacked.
That is correct. And
it's important as just having the softwares.
And I don't want to minimize that, right, Jim? But in this particular case, with what we know for this attack, right?
Yeah.
Those things would not have indicated anything.
At this point, we don't know
because
if it would have
most
happened.
of those systems are not behavioral based, right?
Right.
And so, there are some antiviruses that are behavioral based and could have potentially seen something on this and warning. But you're right. Somebody has to watch it. Somebody has to do something.
Yep.
Right. The service that I was talking about, the manage, detect, and response, right? The MDR service. That there are multiple vendors out there, and we work with a vendor here as well, right?
You can say the name. I don't mind.
Yeah, so we work with a vendor called Arctic Wolf. And so those types of systems are to kind of close that gap even more, right? So we have systems that detect known things, but we also need systems that detect the unknown and that someone can respond to it, someone's monitoring it. And Dave can talk more about this, but that is really, I think, where that gap gets smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So here's how I like to explain the managed detection response piece. I always like to go back. I'm going to change Jim's analogy of the house a little bit. We're going to change our house, and we're going to talk about installing a security system on the house.
Mm-hmm.
You go in, you put in fancy door locks. You put in fancy sensors that, sense temperature changes, smoke, carbon monoxide, the sound of glass breaking, a window being opened, et cetera, et cetera. Awesome. Great.
These are your antiviruses, your security patching softwares, all these things
these are all those things that start screaming if something goes wrong, and they're
not working together. They don't work together. They do individual jobs. Yep.
And they're screaming into a void a lot of times, unless there's some system that puts it all together. Right. And so when we have the system that puts it all together, hey, the window was opened, but the front door is still locked and it's the middle of the night. This is not a typical combination that we see. This is the equivalent of what we call log aggregation. And I'm not going to get techie. That's why I try to make it about like a physical security system. You have to take all this stuff and kind of smush it together and say which one of these things doesn't belong here. All right. And even if you've got the ability to bring all that stuff together and say, ooh, this is not a normal set of circumstances, that doesn't mean anything unless somebody's sitting there going, oh, there's an abnormal set of circumstances at 123 Main Street. So that's where you get what's called a security operations center, a SOC.
Yep.
And this is a group of people, typically, who are watching and monitoring 24/7 so that the second something seems out of whack, they stand ready to step in and either take mitigation steps or get with the people who have the opportunity to take the mitigation steps. Right. This is like hey, nobody's home, but we sense smoke. We're going to automatically call the fire department and have them show up. There's one thing to say to beep because you got smoke in the house. There's another thing to automatically call the fire department to come and minimize the damage that the fire has caused.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is
MDR.
Yeah, and that's the service that you pay for with your security system, that with the team that's watching and putting all the pieces together.
A lot of people now. Let me ask you guys a question. And here's what people are going to watch us. They're going to say, "Wasn't that what an MSP does?"
Not at all. Not at all. A managed service provider is actually a very generic term.
Yeah.
We work with a dozen different managed services. We could be a managed service provider for your phone systems, meaning we'll make sure your phone systems are installed and working properly, and you just hand it to us. You don't have to worry about it yourself. We'll take care of it. We could be a managed service provider on making sure you've got all the tools in place and updated. But a managed service provider is generally just providing the managed service. That's the name. But it doesn't mean that a managed service provider is 24/7 eyes on security. We get alerts from those things that Jim talked about. If an antivirus program that we have out there finds a virus, yes, we get alerted. Whether or not that's going to be after the damage has already been done is the question. And a lot of these attacks are specifically geared to fly under the radar of the tools. And so it takes a very sophisticated additional set of technology and a different group of people that are specifically focusing on that activity to try to get there that step ahead. And so that's where when Vinny says it's shrinking that gap, If you got nothing, it's like this. You get a reputable managed service provider to put in some managed tools. You get here. Then you get into the whole managed detection and response or managed security service provider, and it gets even smaller. Notice I never go to zero.
Nope, you can't.
But each one of those steps, we're bringing you from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
But we need additional stuff in order to get you to here.
Yeah,
that's what the managed detection response that Finney's talking about. That's why that's so critical, is it gets you from here to here.
Now, your managed service provider should manage that from your Arctic Wolf. There are a number of ways it can be done,
but it's either a different service.
Yeah,
but it's a different service.
That's not making sure the patches get pushed out, not making sure the updates the antivirus gets patched. They're not even looking for that.
Making sure you got locks on the doors.
That's right. Making sure, like you said, the combination of things that are happening in your environment are unusual enough to throw up a red flag that somebody needs to be looking at this.
I can tell you,
that's what an MDR works.
I'm going to add one more thing. Even if your managed service provider provides 24/7 support, right? It still requires a specialized security team that does this every day. I can tell you from my experience when we have an MDR, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of alerts that come in every day, right? For depending on the size of the organization, and then all those things have to be, evaluated as far as priority, probability. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, right? Mm-hmm. And then they get categorized, and even the folks that do this every day, right? They're looking at the highest priority ones. They're looking at the highest priority one and looking at the probability. Is this legitimate or not? In order to make that determination, they have to have a lot of experience doing this. They have to have a lot of exposure to it. So your everyday, I'm sorry, there might be MSPs that have a SOC, right? I'm not going to say no.
There are.
But your average everyday MSP doesn't have the team for this. And that's why we, as SpliceNet, we've chosen to outsource this, right?
Yeah.
We have a partner, a very trusted partner, a very well-known partner that does this, and that's all that they do. They don't care about tech support. They don't care about printers and servers and all that.
They're looking at them for unusual behavior.
Yes, of
they're
course.
Looking at all
but
that
they
stuff
don't know anything about keeping them working. That's not their job.
Yeah.
And even and I like to think of SpliceNet as a relatively sophisticated MSP. We try real hard. And we've been around for a while, so we're not some startup that's been around for a year or two just trying to figure it out as we go. We've done this for a long, long time. And we had to look at it and say, you know what? We're not so arrogant as to think that we can do all this ourselves. And so we did partner with somebody. And frankly, I think this is another discussion that you should talk. If you're an end user, like a business that maybe uses an MSP, you should talk to them about whether or not they have a SOC service available like a third-party Arctic Wolf solution. If they don't have that partnership, I would be a little bit nervous. And that's not a knock against people, but again, it's that arrogance thing that I keep going back to, having the right attitude. We're not perfect. We can't do everything. And so partnering with the right people makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we're a little over time.
Sorry about that. I rambled.
Look, I think this subject commanded it. I mean, we had a nice comment, one of the LinkedIn users thanking us for this. And you know what? We couldn't pass this. This is a very important topic. So if you're not a member of No Law Firm Left Behind on LinkedIn, there's the link. All you have to do is go to LinkedIn and search No Law Firm Left Behind. Again, take a picture of this link. But if you don't have time to do that, just go to, if you're listening to the podcast or something, just go to LinkedIn and search No Law Firm Left Behind. You'll find the group. Join the group by all means, please. What I'm going to do also, guys, and I think I've got something. I think I can dig it up. I'm going to find a resource that people can request from us to ask of their MSP, right? Does your MSP do X, Y, and Z? And so you can actually kind of have a short checklist and have a conversation with your MSP to help, again, keep this from happening. And then I'll have another list on things that you can do to make sure that you're being protected as best as possible.
And let me add something. Go ahead.
If you're one of our customers and you're listening and you want to know what we're doing, yes, talk to us as well.
Yeah, just ask.
And one of the things I want to point this out, a lot of times, and we see this all the time, the whole, did you ask your MSP this, that, or the other thing? It's meant to be like a gotcha thing by like a lot of people. That's not the goal of what we're doing here. Most customers would be surprised at the services that are available to them through their MSPs, but they've just never inquired about it.
They don't even know.
And so there are a lot of really good MSPs out there that have all this stuff. You just don't know it because you never asked. So this is really, it's a resource for you to go back and ask and make sure that you're getting everything that you should get.
And I will say this, when you start asking your MSP these questions, they're going to think you're leaving them. And, yeah, every time
somebody
says, "Hey,
who's telling them we're stuck?"
Right. So now is the perfect time, and your reason is with what just happened. I think it's important for us to know. And by the way, I saw these awesome guys on the show that I saw that said I should be asking these questions. Even if you're not considering coming over to us for assistance, you should be doing it for your business, and now's the perfect time. So, guys, I'm going to end it here.
Yep.
Unless you got Dave looked like you wanted to say something.
No, I could talk for another hour.
We could go on forever.
We'll do another show.
Take care. Again, this is No Law from Left Behind. We're on Tuesdays at 10:30 Eastern. See you next week. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
have a good one.
See you, everyone.